Have you ever looked at a multimillionaire and thought, they're set for life? It seems impossible to blow through hundreds of millions of dollars, doesn't it? But in the glitzy world of Hollywood, going from a private jet to a bankruptcy court is more common than you'd think. From legendary athletes to pop icons, the fall from grace is often swifter than the rise to fame. Today we are diving deep into the most shocking financial meltdowns in entertainment history. Stories of tiger-sized debts, literal ghost towns, and legal battles that bled icons dry. We're exploring the how and the why behind these absolute bonkers disappearances of wealth. By the time we're finished, those figures in your modest savings account might just start looking like a luxury. Buckle up, because these are the cautionary tales of the superstars who had it all and then lost every single penny. Let's kick things off with the man who was once considered the baddest man on the planet, Iron Mike Tyson. At the peak of his career, Tyson wasn't just a boxer. He was a global phenomenon, a human wrecking ball who commanded purses that would make even modern athletes blush. Throughout his time in the ring, it is estimated that he raked in a staggering £300 million, or roughly $400 million. To most of us, that is never work again money. But for Mike, it was just fuel for a lifestyle that was, quite frankly, certifiably bonkers. So how does a man with £300 million end up filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2003 with $23 million in debt? The answer lies in a cocktail of extreme extravagance and a total lack of financial boundaries. Mike didn't just buy cars. He bought fleets of luxury vehicles he barely drove. He didn't just throw parties. He hosted celebrations that cost more than the average person's entire home. And then there were the tigers. Mike famously spent over $140,000 on 3 white Bengal tigers, plus thousands more every month just to feed and house them. However, it wasn't just the exotic pets and jewelry that pulled the rug out from under him. The real knockout punch came from a mountain of unpaid taxes to the IRS, messy divorce settlements, and astronomical legal fees. By the early 2000s, the king of the heavyweight division had officially hit rock bottom left with absolute zero. But perhaps the most incredible part of Tyson's story isn't the fall, it's the resurrection. Instead of fading into obscurity, Mike reinvented himself. From a hilarious cameo in The Hangover to his raw and honest one-man comedy shows, he proved that bankruptcy wasn't the end of his legacy. He treated his financial ruin as an expensive lesson in humility, eventually fighting his way back to a stable, successful life. It's a powerful reminder that no matter how hard you fall, the count doesn't start until you decide to stay down. Moving from the boxing ring to the streets of New York, we find one of the most ironic financial collapses in hip-hop history. Curtis Jackson, known to the world as 50 Cent, built his entire brand on the image of ruthless ambition and invincibility. His debut album, Get Rich or Die Tryin', didn't just top the charts in 2003, it became the blueprint for a new era of rap mogulism. For years, it seemed like everything he touched turned to gold, especially after his legendary deal with Vitamin Water, which reportedly netted him a cool $100 million. However, the bigger the empire, the harder the fall. In 2015, the world was stunned when the man who famously flaunted stacks of $100 bills on Instagram filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. He listed debts of over £22 million, leaving fans wondering where did all that in-to-club money go, while many stars lose their wealth through partying. 50 Cent's downfall was a masterclass in how legal warfare can bury you. The rapper found himself caught in a storm of high-stakes lawsuits. The most damaging was a multi-million-dollar judgment awarded to a woman whose private video he had leaked online. Combined with a failed business venture involving a headphone company, the legal fees and damages became a mountain he could no longer climb. There is a dark irony in seeing a man who commercialized the hustle, who told the world he would die before being poor, standing in front of a judge admitting his bank accounts were empty. It was a sobering reality check that showed no matter how many records you sell or how tough your persona is, the courtroom is a different kind of battlefield. 50 Cent's story serves as a stark warning. Lawsuits are the silent killers of wealth, and sometimes trying to get rich is much easier than staying that way. If there is one name that serves as the ultimate cautionary tale for the 1990s, it is Stanley Burrell, better known to the world as MC Hammer. During his absolute peak, Hammer wasn't just a rapper, he was a global cultural phenomenon. His hit "You Can't Touch This" was played on every radio station, and his signature parachute pants were everywhere. At the height of his fame, he was raking in an astounding £300 million a year. To the public eye, he was the definition of making it. But as we've learned, a high income is meaningless if your outgoings are even higher. The primary reason for Hammer's spectacular crash wasn't just a lack of hits, it was a level of over-the-top spending that defied logic. He didn't just live like a king, he tried to support an entire kingdom. Hammer purchased a sprawling 40-room mansion in California that cost $30 million, which he then spent another $20 million renovating with gold-plated gates and marble floors. But the real drain on his finances was his loyalty. At one point, he had an entourage of over 200 people on his payroll, including childhood friends and family members, costing him an estimated $500,000 every single month. By 1996, the music had stopped and the money had dried up. MC Hammer was forced into bankruptcy with debts totaling over £13 million. The man who once had a private jet and a stable of 19 thoroughbred horses was suddenly left with nothing but the clothes on his back. His story is a powerful reminder that you should never judge a person's true wealth by the flashiness of their exterior. A 40-room mansion can quickly become a prison of debt if you don't respect the math behind the money. Hammer's downfall teaches us that while you might be able to touch the fame, you can't keep the fortune without a solid plan to protect it. Moving on to a story that is as legendary as it is bizarre, we have the one and only Nicolas Cage. Now, Cage's story hits a bit differently because he wasn't just a celebrity, he was and still is a powerhouse actor with an Academy Award to his name. At one point, he was one of the highest paid stars in Hollywood, commanding upwards of $20 million per film and amassing a fortune estimated at over $150 million. But while some people buy stocks or bonds, Nicolas Cage bought, well, everything else. Cage's spending habits were nothing short of cinematic. He developed a taste for the eccentric and the rare that eventually spiraled into a financial, national treasure disaster. We're talking about a portfolio that included 2 European castles, 15 different residences including a $25 million waterfront home in Newport Beach, and a private island in the Bahamas. But he didn't stop at real estate. Cage famously outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for a 67-million-year-old Tarbosaurus dinosaur skull, which cost him a cool $276,000, only to later find out it was stolen property and had to be returned to the Mongolian government. By 2009, the taxman came knocking. The IRS slapped Cage with a $6.2 million lien for unpaid property taxes, and he found himself on the hook for millions more in various debts. He ended up suing his business manager, alleging he had been led down a path of financial ruin, but the damage was done. What makes Cage's story unique is his response. Rather than disappearing, he became the hardest working man in show business. He started accepting almost every role offered to him, from high-budget blockbusters to obscure indie films, specifically to pay off his debts. While some mocked his choice of roles, others admired his work ethic. He spent years digging himself out of a hole that his own imagination had built, proving that even a Hollywood legend isn't immune to the gravity of a bad bank balance. When we talk about the most tragic financial declines in history, few stories are as complex and heartbreaking as that of the king of pop, Michael Jackson. Michael wasn't just a singer, he was a global institution. Throughout his unprecedented career, he earned hundreds of millions of dollars from record-breaking albums like Thriller's sold-out world tours, and his incredibly shrewd acquisition of the ATV music catalog, which included the rights to most of the Beatles' songs. By all logic, he should have been one of the wealthiest men on the planet. However, Michael's lifestyle was built on a foundation of staggering debt. The centerpiece of his financial world was Neverland Ranch, a 2,700-acre fantasy land that cost an estimated $10 million a year just to maintain. It featured a private zoo, a theme park, and a full-time staff of dozens. While his income was massive, his burn rate was even higher. Reports suggest that at several points in his later life, Michael was spending roughly $30 million more per year than he was actually bringing in. The situation took a turn for the worse as legal troubles began to mount. Between the 1990s and the mid-2000s, Michael spent tens of millions on legal defense fees and private settlements. To keep his lifestyle afloat, he began taking out massive loans against his most valuable asset, his share of the Sony/ATV catalog. By the time of his passing in 2009, it was estimated that the King of Pop was carrying a staggering debt of roughly £400 million. It is a profound irony that the most famous man in the world was essentially living on borrowed time and borrowed money. His story hits differently because it shows that even the most brilliant artistic mind can be crushed by the weight of poor financial structure. Although his estate eventually turned things around and became incredibly profitable after his death, Michael spent his final years under the crushing shadow of financial ruin. In the world of celebrity investments, few stories are as ambitious or as disastrous as that of Kim Basinger. In 1989, Basinger was one of the most sought-after actresses in Hollywood, coming off the massive success of Batman. She was an Oscar winner with beauty talent and what seemed like an endless supply of cash. However, instead of investing in boring stocks or gold, she decided to make a move that sounds like something straight out of a movie script. She bought a town. Basinger paid $20 million to purchase Brazelton, Georgia, a small town of about 500 people. Her vision was to transform the sleepy area into a massive tourist destination complete with film studios, a theme park, and a shopping center. She wanted to create a cultural hub that would rival Hollywood itself. It was a bold, creative dream, but it lacked one crucial element: a realistic business plan. The Brazelton project quickly turned into a financial nightmare. As development stalled and the bills piled up, Basinger found herself bleeding money. The final blow, however, didn't come from the town itself, but from a legal battle. Around the same time, she backed out of a verbal agreement to star in the controversial film Boxing Helena. The studio sued her for breach of contract, and a jury ordered her to pay a staggering $8.1 million in damages. With her cash tied up in a town that wasn't making any money, and a massive legal judgment hanging over her head, Basinger was forced to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1993. She eventually sold Brazelton for a mere $1 million, a devastating 95% loss on her original investment. Her story is a legendary Hollywood cautionary tale. Never let your creative ambitions blind you to the cold, hard reality of business. It proves that even when you own the town, you still have to answer to the bank. To wrap up our list of fallen stars, we look at two icons who prove that financial ruin doesn't care about your talent or your tenure in the industry: Wayne Newton and Cyndi Lauper. First, let's talk about Wayne Newton, famously known as Mr. Las Vegas. For decades, Newton was the face of the Strip, performing thousands of shows and earning a legendary reputation as one of the hardest-working entertainers in history. By all accounts, he was a money-making machine. However, in 1992, Newton shocked the entertainment world by filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy while claiming to be $20 million in debt. The cause: a combination of incredibly poor financial management and an addiction to a lavish lifestyle that even a Vegas residency couldn't sustain. Newton's expenses were astronomical, including the maintenance of a 52-acre estate called Shenandoah, which featured a private zoo and a collection of Arabian horses. His story is a classic example of steady earner syndrome, thinking the faucet will never turn off, only to realize too late that the pipes have been leaking for years. Then we have the legendary Cyndi Lauper. Long before Girls Just Want to Have Fun became a global anthem, Cyndi's career almost ended before it began. In the early 1980s, she was part of a band called Blue Angel. When the band's album failed to take off, they fired their manager, who then sued the group for a staggering $80,000. In today's money, that was a fortune for a struggling artist. Cyndi was forced to file for bankruptcy in 1981, even working in a retail store and singing in Japanese restaurants just to make ends meet. However, her story is the ultimate beacon of hope. Just 2 years after her bankruptcy, she released her debut solo album, which became a massive hit. She proved that financial ruin isn't a life sentence, it's a hurdle. As we look back at these stories, a clear haunting pattern emerges. Whether it's a heavyweight champion, an Oscar winner, or the king of pop, the pitfalls are identical: lifestyle inflation, predatory contracts, and the yes men trap. The biggest takeaway for all of us: it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. Most of these stars didn't go broke because they stopped earning. They went broke because they stopped paying attention. They outsourced their financial souls to advisors who didn't have their best interests at heart. Fame is a fickle friend, and fortune is even flightier. But as Mike Tyson and Cyndi Lauper showed us, you can always stage a comeback if you're willing to learn the rules of the game. So the next time you look at your savings account, remember, at least you don't owe $400 million, and you definitely don't have a dinosaur skull in your living room that you can't pay for.